When you think of the Roman Empire, you probably picture this unstoppable, massive superpower. But what if I told you that it once came so close to total collapse that it nearly vanished? Today, we're going to dive into a wild, 50-year period of chaos that almost brought the world's greatest empire to its knees. So how does something that huge, that powerful, just fall apart? I mean, how does an empire that basically ruled the entire known world get pushed to the very brink? For Rome, the answer is a 50-year stretch of pure, unfiltered chaos called the crisis of the 3rd century. So let's set the scene here. Imagine an empire literally tearing itself apart from the inside out. And look, this wasn't just a bad couple of years for Rome. This was a total, catastrophic meltdown of its political, military, and economic systems, all at once. Okay, so get this. The biggest problem was actually inside the empire. The Roman army, the most feared fighting force on the planet, wasn't out there fighting enemies at the borders. Nope, Roman legions were busy fighting other Roman legions. And why? It's pretty simple, really. All their generals wanted to be the boss. They all wanted to be the next emperor. And this period gave us a whole new breed of ruler. We call them barracks emperors. Basically, they were generals who got their soldiers to back them, and then they just march in and take power by force. No laws, no line of succession, just pure military might. But, live by the sword, die by the sword. Most of these guys didn't last long at all. They'd usually get assassinated, often by the very same soldiers who put them in power. And you gotta understand, this wasn't some short-term problem. This absolute nightmare of endless civil war and one emperor getting knocked off after another, it went on for 50 years. I mean, think about that. 50 years. That's a whole lifetime for a lot of people back then. Imagine being born and living your entire life in a world of constant chaos and fear. Okay, so all this political mess, this constant fighting, it didn't just stay in the emperor's palace. It was like tipping over the first domino in a huge, terrifying line. The chaos started to spread, and it hit every single part of Roman life. And here's how that chain reaction worked. First, you've got the generals and their armies fighting each other to see who gets to be emperor. So what's happening at the borders? Nothing. They're wide open. That was basically a giant come on in sign for outside tribes. They started pouring into Roman lands to raid and plunder, and the result of all that pressure? The empire literally started to crack apart. And we're not talking about small-time raids here. Up in the north, you had major tribes like the Goths and the Alemanni just flooding across the frontier. Meanwhile, over in the east, the new and powerful Sassanid Persian Empire wasn't just raiding. They were launching full-scale invasions. They even captured a Roman emperor in battle. That was a massive shock. So just picture it. Rome was trying to fight wars on all its borders while also fighting a civil war against itself. It was an impossible situation. Things got so bad that the empire, it shattered. It literally broke into 3 separate chunks. In the west, a big piece broke off and became the Gallic Empire. Over in the east, another piece broke off and became the Palmyrian Empire. And the crazy thing is, these new empires weren't really trying to destroy Rome. They were just trying to survive. The central government was so busy with its own civil wars that it couldn't protect its own people, so they decided to protect themselves. So you've got political chaos and military disaster? What's next? Oh yeah, a complete economic freefall. Think about it. Constant war is unbelievably expensive. And after decades of this, the Roman treasury was completely empty. The empire was broke. The emperors were desperate. They had to pay their soldiers or they'd be the next ones assassinated. So they came up with what they thought was a clever solution, a process called debasement. Here's what they did. They'd take the silver coins, melt them down, and mix in a whole bunch of cheaper metal, like copper. That way, they could mint a lot more coins. But, and this is a huge but, each new coin had way less real silver in it, so each coin was worth a whole lot less. So what did this actually mean for regular people trying to buy stuff? Well, check this out. At the beginning of the century, one of those silver coins could buy you a loaf of bread. Fast forward to the year 270, and that same coin was so worthless it could maybe get you a few grains of wheat. This is what we call hyperinflation, and it was devastating. People's life savings basically became worthless almost overnight. And as if all that wasn't bad enough, society itself started to crumble. A terrible plague, called the Cyprian Plague, ripped through the empire, killing thousands of people every single day. With so many people dying, and with armies constantly marching across farmland, there weren't enough people to grow food, and that led to widespread famine. People fled to the cities for safety, and those cities started building huge defensive walls. The bottom line?
the population of the Roman Empire plummeted. It was a demographic catastrophe.
Okay, so at this point, it sounds pretty hopeless, right? The empire is in three pieces, the economy is a wreck, and plague and famine are everywhere. But just when it looked like it was all over, a series of strong, capable leaders started to pull the empire back from the very brink of collapse.
And the first big name you need to know is a tough-as-nails soldier emperor named Aurelian. He was so good at cleaning up the mess, he earned himself an incredible nickname, Restitutor Orbis. That's Latin for restorer of the world. And man, did he earn it. In just 5 years, that's it, Aurelian marched his armies all the way to the west and brought the Gallic Empire back into the fold. Then, he turned around, marched all the way to the east, and did the exact same thing to the Palmyrene Empire. He pretty much single-handedly stitched the Roman world back together. Oh, and he also started building those massive walls around the city of Rome itself, and that tells you everything you need to know about how dangerous the world had become.
So Aurelian was like the emergency surgeon who stopped the bleeding. But the long-term cure? That came from another emperor, a guy named Diocletian. Diocletian looked back at the last 50 years of total chaos, and he realized something huge. The problem wasn't just bad emperors. The problem was the system itself. The Roman Empire, he decided, was just too big for one person to rule anymore. So Diocletian didn't just try to be a better ruler. He changed the entire game. He created something called the Tetrarchy. It literally means rule by four. He split the empire into 4 big pieces and put a ruler in charge of each one. You had 2 senior emperors and 2 junior ones. This way, someone was always close to a troubled border, ready to respond to a crisis instantly. It was a brilliant idea to bring back stability. And it worked. Diocletian's reforms finally, officially, ended the crisis. But the empire that emerged from that 50-year-long fire, it was not the same Rome. The trauma of the crisis had changed it, deeply and forever. This was a brand new Roman world.
And the changes were absolutely massive. For one, the government wasn't really run from the city of Rome anymore. The new capitals were out near the dangerous borders where the emperors needed to be. The emperor also changed. He wasn't the first among equals like Augustus had been. He was now an absolute godlike dictator. And the army? It started relying way more on foreign soldiers, sometimes hiring the same barbarian tribes they had just been fighting.
So why does all this matter? Because this whole crisis marks the real end of the classical Roman Empire, the one you see in most movies. It's the start of a whole new period historians call late antiquity. It's kind of the bridge between the ancient world and what would eventually become the Middle Ages. And all of this leaves us with a really big final question. Rome survived. It pulled back from the brink. But with so many huge changes to its government, its army, even its identity, you have to ask yourself, was it still really Rome?